One of the things that inspires me the most, which is literally the foundation of the energy that my paintings give, is this search for joy. And as someone who's from the African diaspora and someone who just has experienced like loss, the search for joy is so important in my work. And sometimes that shows up in the most obvious way, like the colors that I use, because they're like really bright hues, and like I use yellow a lot, and colors that are easily recognizable that make people feel warm. But then the marks for me kind of show an underbelly of, wait, some of the paintings are like bright but feel like they've been through a journey or they've been through something before you get to them. This idea of like these heavier things that are in contention with this childlike aesthetic. So the work is really about transforming emotions into finding joy, this idea of connection between the child and the adult, and then this ultimate act of movement in doing that. And those things are like what really drive the paintings. Like, then color is the main tool that I use to do that. And I want my paintings to be taken in and received and felt and alchemized in the brains of whoever's looking at them. But the gaze is always from an Afro-diasporic feminine eye. My name is Eilen Itzel Mena. I'm a multimedia artist, and I'm here at the Jackson Studio to talk about my painting process. When I was younger, I grew up in the Dominican Republic, and my house was full of just so many adornments, and my mom was an architect at the time. So she would always have her floor plans. I was in the 90s. She wasn't using AutoCAD or anything. So I would be next to her with crayons, drawing, coloring. So I feel like my art practice started from seeing my home feel like an installation in the Caribbean, and then also seeing my mom do her own creative practice, which was her profession. The people that like react to my work the best that I love are always children. Like, they always feel happy. They see things in the paintings. They copy the paintings. Like, every time I have a painting up and kids are around and they have paper, they like always paint the painting. I want the child energy in my work to make a case for happiness. And it's something that's so subtle and something that's so visceral and so emotional. And it doesn't have to be really like meta or like highly conceptual. It's just like, I want to feel good and I want to feel happy, and I want to do that. Art making for me began in that space. I feel like seeing them was the beginning of me knowing, oh, this is a thing that people do professionally and at home and for themselves. So after growing up in the Dominican Republic, my family moved back to the United States. Now we live in the South Bronx. My middle school teacher, who went to boarding school in America, suggested that I apply to boarding school, this prep school in Connecticut. And that led me to studying art for the first time academically in a focused way at the Hotchkiss School. And after being in that rigorous college prep environment, I told myself, okay, now I want to do this in university. And that led me to getting accepted to a few art schools in America, and I finally decided that I wanted to go to the University of Southern California and be an artist and study at the USC Roski School of Fine Art. And that's kind of like the trajectory that got me there. And I will say the period between living in the Dominican Republic to America again, my mom passed. And I noticed that after she passed, art became a thing that was played for me in the Dominican Republic to now a form of like expressing emotions. And through that emotional expression, I created a portfolio that led me to an academic environment with art. I guess being part of the diaspora for me, it means being diasporic. So movement is important. So I like the idea of going from the Caribbean to the East Coast and now the West Coast and landing at USC. So when I was at Roski, everybody who studies fine art has to start with painting and drawing, sculpture and graphic design. But I just loved the sculpture class more than any of the other foundational classes, because the sculpture class allowed me to be more experimental. I just loved the freedom. Being in BA allowed me to just make the work that I wanted to make. So actually, while I was in sculpture, I was making installations, I was doing performance, I was growing in graphic design. I put painting to the side because at Hotchkiss, technique was so important, and I just wanted to explore myself more conceptually in school. So a lot of my work at the time was based on identity, Black history, femininity. I was thinking a lot about the diaspora and food that connects us, especially living so far away from New York. There's a Latin community in LA, but it's not Caribbean. So I kind of had to find myself through the art I was making. And it was really interesting because I feel like now the new stage that we're entering in my practice is more of conceptual history identity as opposed to art for play or art as a form of expressing emotion that I can't really talk about. I love color, and I feel like my color theory comes from the Caribbean, because when I think about color theory or like Western understanding of it, or just like even marketing or graphic design, like when you think of love, people think of red, pinks. But because I'm coming from like an Ifa perspective, when I think of love, I think of the deity that's connected to love, which is Oshun. So I'm thinking of amber and like yellows. Color is one of the tools I employ to like bring joy to the forefront. And I love using bright, saturated color and highly saturated hues because of that notion of like Black and brown bodies being made invisible in the psychological underbelly of a lot of like the environments that they exist in. So color for me demands to be seen. I want the color to take a physical form. Another reason why I love to make impasto paintings, because the oil paint just sits on the surface and like you want to grab it almost. There's like a 3D-ness. I remember someone at school told me you paint like a sculptor, and I was like, this is the best compliment you could give me, because I want the work to feel like an object. In a lot of my paintings, there's this flow that happens. I notice that when I'm done with a painting and I look at it, whether it's figurative or abstract, there's always like a movement of color that goes in a certain direction. I absolutely love cadmium yellow, cadmium red, cobalt blue, cerulean, viridian green, burnt sienna, and burnt umber. Those are always present. I like burnt sienna gets mixed into things a lot just to like have the temperature be the same in the palette. I usually like have one grounding color that does that, and I find that it's like purples or reds usually. If I make black, I'm usually mixing burnt umber with ultramarine blue, and the white that I use is always titanium white. Like I'm always mixing with it to make things just lighter and give tonal range into the work. So my last semester at USC, I actually studied abroad in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. And it was the best decision I've made in my undergraduate career. I remember telling myself, okay, don't make any art in the time that you're here. Just take in the artistry that's everywhere, because Bahia is such a magical place. All of the homes in Bahia are just really colorful and bright, whether it's energetically or visually. It's also a place where candomblé and umbanda, which is an Afro Brazilian religion that's a blend of a bunch of tribes in Africa, particularly Yoruba, Congo, Angola. This is a place that has extremely powerful and high and intense African spiritual energy. So there would be days in Bahia where I was on the bus going to school and people would just start reciting spoken word poetry. So I was just writing every day. I remember writing poems from dreams that I was having, and then those things would become the beginning of some works that I would make in London right after that. So it was a place that felt like I needed it for inspiration. And after being there, and I also danced a lot while I was there. So I was using my body more and in a more trained, focused way. And that led me to, wow, I like this feeling of just being here, letting my intuition lead, because it's a place that asks for your intuition to lead, because every day feels like an adventure. After those 6 months in Bahia, I remember graduating from USC. Now I'm not in school anymore, and having this desire to just draw every day, and drawing these figures and these hands and these nails and these clouds and just things that were just so feminine and rooted in like being from the African diaspora, that then led me to having a painting practice, which is just letting the spirit lead the practice and letting the work be made intuitively. It made me say, wow, like the ideas that you have can only be expressed through painting. Drawing for me is so important. I don't draw often to prepare for a painting, but I'm a painter drawer. Like the paintings are more in relationship to drawing than to painting, I feel. And the oil sticks really help me do that. I sketch a lot, and a lot of the sketches don't even become paintings. They just are works on their own. I'm working on a series of screen prints, so those required sketches because I wanted like a range of what I can print. And that's interesting because I usually don't work like that. So that's been a new thing in my practice recently. I always use pencil. I love graphite. As much, it's funny because as much as I am a very like pro color person, when I'm drawing, it's just simple grayscale. The drawings feel really colorful. And that's something that's important to me, even if I'm using one material. And actually, drawing has helped me kind of work tonally in my paintings. I love it when artists do that. I think some of the most beautiful work a lot of us make is just a simple drawing because it's so, you don't plan a drawing, like you just draw. Depending on the surface, I have different grounds. So if it's canvas, I usually just gesso it. Sometimes I paint on Hessian. I always use the Michael Harding non-absorbent ground, but I always use the transparent one, that acrylic primer. The process is always the same after the grounds are set for me, where I always put a layer of acrylic first. It's hard for me to just paint on white. I like to paint with baby blue first sometimes, or like yellow, or like sometimes depending on how I make those marks, that's how the composition forms. And then I start building up from there. There are paintings that I've had where my hand just wasn't as steady as I was gessoing or putting the first layer of acrylic down, that there's like shadows of movement into the canvas. And then I'm like, that's the composition. Like that's how we do it. After the acrylic is laid down, then it's just like layers and layers and layers of oil or like acrylic, or sometimes I have to compartmentalize it and remember where I put what. Especially if I'm doing an abstract painting, I want the painting to kind of feel like a body that's getting added limbs to it. I love oil bars. The reason I use them often in my work, they remind me of being young and using crayons. So it just feels like the adult version. I always use R&F oil sticks. That's my go-to. I just love the flow of it. They're so buttery to me. The hues are like perfect for what I'm trying to do. And they're so saturated. So sometimes when I get to the nub of them, I just like, I'll mix a couple, like little bits of a couple, and add beeswax and like other oils like linseed or sand oil to create a bigger stick. Then I get like more unique colors, and like sometimes like because I use them so much, there's like hints of the other paint because I like work wet on wet a lot. Sometimes I'll add like oil paint to that to make it thicker or like make it brighter and add more pigment. I paint straight out of the tube and I make marks with the tube, or with the oil bars, they're wrapped in like paper. So like sometimes the paper will rip and I would just like scoop paint with the paper and I'll make the marks with the paper or a palette knife. Sometimes with my gloves, I just scoop paint and like start smearing it. So I'm not really like a brush person. But if I need it, I'll use it. I have so many brushes, which is funny. I feel like a lot of my painting is in my wrist and then just grabbing something and just like making a mark in that way. Painting and drawing is the first type of artwork that we all are met with as children. So I wanted to go back to this childhood energy of like mark making, just simply doing it. Experimentation is really important, and I wish artists did that more. I think going beyond the medium of choice is something that's really important, whether it's to study it, make something in that other way, so then you could bring that back to the thing that you really want to specialize in. My identity is very intersectional, so it's really hard for me not to look at creativity in an intersectional way. I would just leave artists with like definitely experiment. And I know it sounds really cliche, but the more you bring other elements into your practice, the stronger it's going to be, because it can stand on its own and it can be in conversation with other things. I find that when someone is a multidisciplinary artist, people often think, okay, this person does lens-based, they do movement, they do sculptural work, they do installation. But the minute you add painting into that toolbox, you're a painter. And I'm just like, I am a multimedia artist who paints, because I just wanted every painting that I put in an installation, or even if I paint a wall, as part of the installation to be intentional and to be made well and to be in conversation with the other objects or elements that are in the room. You've had all these stages of making art. You've done it for pleasure and play. You've done it for emotional release. You've done it for identity exploration. And now it's time to put all of that together, but master a craft. The movement of my body started giving me marks that I couldn't come up with on my own if I wasn't moving my body in a certain way. And I just fell in love with abstraction. This was like such a pivotal moment in my art practice because now abstraction gets introduced through movement after coming from a performance practice. And it just kind of like everything exploded in beautiful ways. So since then, I just like started making these huge large scale paintings and like these huge installations that have to do with mark making and like moving the body. So I actually feel like my work is the mark of movement. I kind of want my practice and the works that I put, particularly the paintings, to feel like if you look too quick, it looks like something just kind of moved. Or even like sculptures. I had sculptures in my degree show at Slade that were like all over the ground. So it actually asked the viewer to kind of move around them to be in the space. And I just reject the idea of just standing still and looking at something. Like this work demands you to see it and it demands you to move with it. So now when I look at my practice, I'm like, oh, of course I'm not only a painter. I'm a movement artist. I'm a multimedia artist. I'm a community organizer. And all of these are connected to performance and moving of the body, because that is the one thing I can say that ties all of the work that I do together. Just moving of the body and feeling like something moved to create the work is just really important to me. As a Black woman, you find that you are made invisible psychologically and physically in a lot of spaces in the world, especially that are Eurocentric, which a lot of places are. And so I think I was so drawn to space making as a physical thing and also as an environmental, emotional, spiritual thing. I kind of look at my practice as a form of taking up space so that the thing that it's presenting to what wants to be seen is seen and it's undeniably being seen. The bigger I work, I find that I go beyond the edge, which I'm enjoying, especially because the body wants to move and because I want the paintings to feel like they're in movement. I want them to feel like they can walk out of the frame or like elements of it can move away from it instead of just vibrating in it. A lot of the work is just intuitive. I don't even use references. I just really have to take in something physically for me to even get to the studio to make anything. And if I have a lot of references, visual references, photos, or objects in the room while I'm painting, it's gonna feel like I'm walking behind someone on the street and I'm trying to copy their footsteps. There are times where I have to like move my work away from each other and just have like the white wall to just paint what I'm painting. And then there are other times where I just need everything in the room because I'm like, okay, I need bodies here. I need like a body of 5 paintings circling around me for me to make this one. Because now I feel like the crowd is in the room and like I'm making work with the crowd. I remember like one time being in the studio and having a friend tell me, wow, like you make work without like the guilt of what painting is supposed to be like because of the tradition of painting for the last 2,000 years or more. And then I was like, oh yeah, I just don't think about it. I feel like I'm a kid making art. And later on, the formal and the conceptual and historical aspects of the work like get unraveled. I know that I am a multiplication, a mutation of things that came before me. So it would never be just she did this and didn't know what she was doing or like didn't think about it or like she just did it. What is the intention? And I'm like, the intention is unknown, is unseen, is invisible to you. Nothing that I make is new because like my mere existence comes from many people who came before me. So me making work without research doesn't take away the fact that things came before me or that research can come out of it. And that, like my favorite part of the practice is always like writing about the work after I made it, because that's when like I start connecting dots and I'm like, oh wow, like I pulled from this realm to do that. Because I don't think you need to know who you're connected to know you are connected to something. So my spirituality is so important to the way I exist in the world and how I make work. So I've been practicing Isheshe Ifa for the last like 10 years. And it's a practice that is really rooted in like character building, like the ori, which is your head, your consciousness. In some of my paintings, the symbols that I make, like swords, for example, especially in older work, are connected to the Odisha Ogun, which is the Yoruba deity connected to like technology. The blacksmith works with iron. Even like the idea of the snail as a mark maker is coming from the fact that like one of the Odisha that guides my destiny is Obatala, and which is the Odisha connected to the child being molded out of clay in the mother's womb, which is why I work with clay. Or this idea of patience, or Obatala manifesting as a snail, and like me thinking about how that energy supports my practice and seeing how a snail is a mark maker. So borrowing from those cultures is important for me spiritually because it helps me navigate the world from that ancestral background, because the body and the spirit really leads for me, and I know it comes from a realm that has all of ours connected to each other. The poetics of that culture are so expansive that I just feel like one lifetime is not enough for me to pull material from that. It's something that's really important for me, and it's always going to be present in my practice and in my ethos and in the way I see the world and the way I care for the world and the way I show up for myself. The power that I give the viewer is just limitless. Like the only thing that like would actually upset me in the reading of my work would be this denial or like this color blindness that may happen sometimes with abstraction, where it's like, this work's about this, and like they just deny the history, the identity, the culture, the intention that the artist made the work with. But whatever you're feeling, like that could be for you. Like it has nothing to do with what I'm telling you to feel, because I don't want people to tell me how to feel. So I'm not going to tell you how to feel. It doesn't have to be shocking. It doesn't have to be like grand. I don't expect people to cry or feel like, oh my God, this makes me feel so good today, or like not at all. I kind of let them feel whatever they're going to feel when they look at the work. And I just want to always direct them into the place of like, I just want you to leave these and feel better. Like we have like words for people who don't like to dance in DR. It's called pariguayo, which is like means party watcher. And it's just like, come on, like don't just watch people enjoy life without you participating in it. If I feel like I'm getting to that anxious place, I either call a friend or my partner and I show them the work at the current state. And sometimes they pull me back and they're like, just go home. And then other times I'm just tired and I'm just like, if I put another layer, I know I'm not going to stop. So I really need to leave the studio right now, or else this painting is not going to exist in this way tomorrow. Because there's a specific place in abstraction for me where like it begins to feel too busy, which I don't mind, but sometimes it gets muddy and that's when I'm like, I need to go. I'm like losing the hues now. Sometimes like the painting doesn't really need more color for me. It just needs like tonal changes. So that's when like I'm using like my phone and like I'll take a picture of it and I'll make it black and white and like just put it to grayscale. And then I'm like, oh, that area needs more light. So then I need like a lighter version of that color. And I need to tweak it slightly to get what I want out of it. Now I'm thinking of like, is this balanced? Is this saying what I wanted to say? Is this feeling the way I wanted to feel? And when I start asking myself those questions, this is when the work, I feel like, goes from like intuitive energy to like a fine artwork. I take a picture of the work and I like use the markup feature on my phone, and I'll see like how color would look in a corner or whatever. So then like I do like live editing of what I want it to look like if I need to fix it or add to it or remove things. I often like turn the works 360. I just like keep moving them. Like I rotate the canvas a lot. Other times I squint a lot. I back up a lot. It's just a feeling. It kind of feels like my body doesn't want to move anymore in this way, and my mind has left that plane. So the work is complete. Currently, I'm at the Acme Early Careers residency space in Stratford, and the way that my space is set up, it's like directly across from the window. So I get like this cast of light that comes in like directly all the time. And the sun, like the sunrise, and like, I'm assuming because I haven't been there that like early, but the sunrise is probably so beautiful for me. But like the sunset is so beautiful. And like, I used to think that natural light was not that important for me, But then I went to the Slade and I realized that, yeah, it's just not the same. I need natural light. There are times where I'm in the studio and I just have to leave because it's too dark. We kind of paint with a trolley, like a food tray kind of thing. The palette is in movement also. And I actually need a lot of wall space because my work is really thick in the paint, so it takes a while for it to dry. So once something's fully dry, which can take like 6 months, I feel, for me to roll it in a way that I feel comfortable rolling it. Yeah, so I just have like all these tubes of like rolled paint, semicircle, moving trolley, canvas, materials for sculpture, and books in the studio. I think because my work is very intuitive, I have to have the motivation to make art, like, because I'm not referencing anything. So if my spirit isn't trying to do it, I'm not going to. But usually I like meal prep, mostly Dominican food, and then I like go to the studio. I'll work for like I feel like the magic number for me is like 5-6 hours in one sitting. Like I can't do more than that. But then there are other working days for me where I'm reading, writing, researching, and those days are different because if I'm making an installation, like I'll probably like be at home for that working day and I'm writing about it, doing like 3D models of like the space that I'm gonna show the work in. And I don't paint when I stretch, like it's just so tiring, like, and I'm stretching huge canvases a lot of the time. So like as long as I can just prep the canvases to be ready for me, I do that for a few hours and I come back the next day and like I do the flow that I just talked about. I feel like I go through phases of what I'm listening to when I'm making work. At Slade, I was listening to a lot of memoirs. Michelle Obama, Jennifer Lewis, Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown, and specifically an essay by Dr. Joy Morgan about just the politics of pleasure from a Black feminist perspective. But lately, I've just been really listening to like Kendrick Lamar, like Bad Bunny, and Bad Bunny's new album, Debí tirar más fotos, is kind of getting me into salsa. So I keep listening to salsa now. And I'm just really liking the salsa because I feel like my paintings feel like salsa. And then sometimes when I'm bored, I just like watch story times on TikTok. I love it when people see my work and they're like, I could tell she's Caribbean. I could tell she's Latina. I can tell she's a Black artist. Like these things are important for me, and the energy of the work is the same no matter in those places that I lived, because my energy and where I'm from is the same no matter where I am. The environment changes, but my spirit doesn't. And I like that it was birthed in the Dominican Republic. Like the makings of me as a soul are really rooted in that place and my family. And I want my paintings to look like the food that we cook. I want them to feel like the layers of sound in the music that we make. I want it to come from the lens and the gaze of like an Afro, like Latin, feminine perspective.